Dr. Plotkin, I'm going to hand you what's been labeled Plaintiff's Exhibit 10. Sent it?
I sent it.
Okay. This is the product, the manufacturer insert for Recombavax HB, correct?
Yes.
And the clinical trial experience would be found in section 6.1, correct? Correct? Dr. Plotkin?
Yes.
Okay. In section 6.1, when you look at the clinical trials that were done pre-licensure for Recombavax HB, how long does it say that safety was monitored after each dose?
Let's see. Uh, 5 days.
Okay. Is 5 days long enough to detect adverse reactions that occur after 5 days?
No, they would
Is
be.
it-
They would be reported separately as observed in the clinic.
In section 6.1 of the manufacturer insert, which under the Code of Federal Regulations they're supposed to describe the clinical trial, does it provide for anything other than 5 days of monitoring after each dose for adverse events?
It does not specifically say that, no.
Okay. Is 5 days long enough to detect an autoimmune issue that arises after 5 days?
No.
Is 5 days long enough to detect a seizure that arises after 5 days? Okay.
Would be unlikely to have a seizure occur after 5 days.
Is 5 days long enough to detect any neurological disorder that arose from the vaccine after 5 days?
No.
Okay. Was there any control group in this trial? Let me rephrase that. There is no control group, correct?
Not, let's see. Well, they mention 3,258 doses were administered to 1,252 healthy adults.
That's right. But does it mention any control group, Dr. Plotkin?
It does not mention any control group, no.
No. If you turn to section 6.2, what is the list of adverse reactions listed in this section?
These are reports of adverse reactions that likely were reported to the VAERS system.
Under immune system disorders, does it say that there were reports of hypersensitive reactions, including anaphylactoid reactions, bronchospasms, and urticaria having been reported within the first few hours after vaccination?
Yes.
Have there been reports of hypersensitivity syndrome?
Yes, that's what it states.
Reports of arthritis?
It is mentioned.
Okay. It also reports autoimmune diseases, including systemic lupus, erythematosus, lupus-like syndrome, vasculitis, and polyarteritis nodosa as well, correct?
Yes, that's what it states.
And also it states that under the nervous system disorders, it states that after that, there have been reports of Guillain-Barré syndrome, correct?
Yes.
As well as multiple sclerosis, exacerbation of multiple sclerosis, myelitis, including transverse myelitis, seizure, febrile seizure, peripheral neuropathy, including Bell's palsy, radiculopathy. Thank you very much. Muscle weakness, hypothesia, and encephalitis, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now,
before you go on, these reports are required to be included because they have been reported to the authorities as happening after vaccination. That is not proof that the vaccine caused those reactions, because things happen to people all the time, whether or not they've been vaccinated. And as I said, the company is required to report these. Now, I mention that specifically because multiple sclerosis, for example, is mentioned here, been studied in relation to hepatitis B vaccine, and there's no relationship, no causal relationship. So the fact that these things are in the package circular does not mean that the vaccine necessarily caused the stated phenomenon.
When you say that multiple sclerosis has been studied and is determined to not have been caused, you're talking about the 2011 IOM report, I assume?
I'm talking about studies mostly done in France, where the situation arose where there was a concern about that.
You're aware of the 2011 IOM report that looked at certain vaccines in relation to whether they can cause certain adverse reactions?
Yes.
Okay, are you aware that one of the conditions they looked at was multiple sclerosis?
Among others, yes.
Among others, and that they specifically looked at it with regards to hepatitis B?
Yes.
And do you know what their finding was?
I don't remember the exact wording, no.
Yeah, maybe this will remind you. Inadequate to accept or reject a causal relationship. They didn't know, correct?
Yes, but you have to understand, first of all, that science continues, and so studies continue. And secondly, that the IOM specifically decided that they would not draw a conclusion if they weren't sure of the conclusion. So what that statement means is that they don't have data that confirm that multiple sclerosis is caused by the hepatitis B vaccine, but that they don't regard that they have enough data to positively exclude it. So you cannot read that as saying that multiple sclerosis is caused by hepatitis B vaccine.
I never said that. The IOM did, for some of the vaccines and adverse reactions, did conclude that it favors rejection of a causal relationship, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
It didn't reach that conclusion for hepatitis B and multiple sclerosis, correct?
It did not reach that conclusion, okay. But other data suggests that conclusion is warranted, that there is no relationship.
Okay. Well, I'll make a demand for that. You can produce that after this deposition. Just keep notes of all the so what would need to be done in order to know whether or not any of these reported conditions are caused by the vaccine? What you would need is a properly randomized, as you said earlier, placebo-controlled study, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And also, I would point out that multiple sclerosis is a disorder of adults, and the issue that arose in France was related to vaccination of adults.
Okay.
That does not mean that it would be an issue, even if it were an issue, for children.
Dr. Plotkin, I was just asking you what it says on there. There's lots of conditions listed. I'm not saying that multiple sclerosis is caused by this. I'm just asking you if it's listed on section 6.2. In fact, we can even read the top of section 6.2, which says the following additional adverse reactions have been reported with the use of the marketed vaccine. Because these reactions are reported voluntarily from a population of uncertain size, it is not possible to reliably estimate their frequency or establish a causal relationship to a vaccine exposure, right?
Correct.
Okay. So that's what it says right at the top of 6.2. Okay, but these are events that are reported after vaccination, and as we've just discussed, in order to establish whether it's causal between the vaccine and the condition, you need a randomized, placebo-controlled study. But
yes.
That was not done for this hepatitis B vaccine before licensure, was it?
No.
Okay. Okay. And given that the vaccine now appears on the CDC's recommended list, isn't it true that it would now be considered unethical to conduct such a study today?
It would be, yes, it would be ethically difficult.
Okay. So let's take a look at Engerix B. That's the other hepatitis B vaccine that you're testified you recommend Faith received. Do you know how long adverse reactions were reviewed after each dose of that vaccine in the pre-licensure clinical trial?
Not offhand, no.
I'm going to hand you what has been marked Plaintiff's Exhibit 11. This is the manufacturer insert for the Engerix B, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If you turn to section 6.1, which is clinical trials experience, can you please tell me how long the safety review period was in the pre-licensure clinical trials after each dose?
All subjects were monitored for 4 days post-administration. Okay. That does not necessarily mean that they didn't collect reactions after 4 days.
Are you claiming they collected reactions after 4 days, but didn't disclose it here in violation of the Code of Federal Regulations?
I dare say that they collected putative reactions for a longer period. I feel quite positive about that. When they say they were monitored for 4 days, that means active monitoring as opposed to collecting reports later on. Uh-huh. That is not uncommon in clinical trials.
Mm-hmm. Is 4 days long enough to detect an autoimmune issue that arises after 4 days?
No.
Or a neurological disorder that arises after 4 days?
No,
okay.
That would be reported later.
Uh-huh. And can you provide any proof that there was any reports or follow-up after those 4 days?
Well, it doesn't say that here, but I am willing to bet that they did collect reactions after 4 days. And I imagine that the FDA would not have allowed them not to do that.
But as you sit here today, that's just speculation, correct?
Yes, that's speculation based on experience.
I'm going to make a request for you to provide proof of what you're claiming, that there was actually for both hepatitis B vaccines, any safety review that occurred after 4 days of administration of any dose of these vaccines.
Well, again, I'm going to continue the objection, I guess, from last time since we took a longer break. There's a proper procedure to request documents in discovery. He doesn't have to come back and produce it.
The objection's noted. Thank you. Okay. So And there was no placebo group, correct? In the 13,000, in the trial at the top where it talks about 13,000 doses being administered.
It does not say that there was a control group. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at the study.
And do you believe, so you think but you're just speculating that there might have been a control group?
There might have been. It is not unusual for controls to be included, especially if you're looking at reactions. But I don't know specifically for this study.
All right. Well, if you're claiming there might have been a control group, then please do provide support for that, because as far as I understand, the manufacturer, and this was, who makes Engerix-B? Glaxo?
Glaxo.
One of your clients. If there was a control group, they needed to have disclosed that. And I assume they're not disclosing it because there was none.
Well,
Doc, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Well,
Doctor.
all right. Go ahead.
All right.
Ms. Newsom, are you still there?
Yeah, my headset died, but I called back in, so I don't think I missed much. We're still going over the inserts.
So let's go back to section 6.2 on this manufacturer insert for Engerix-B. It talks about the post-marketing experience for this vaccine. This one lists for immune system disorders that were reported, a whole number of them, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And it also lists a number of nervous system disorders, including encephalitis, encephalopathy, migraine, multiple sclerosis, neuritis, neuropathy, paresthesia. I'll ask the question all the way at the end. Guillain-Barré syndrome, Bell's palsy, optic neuritis, paralysis, paresis, seizures, syncope, and transverse myelitis. Correct? It lists all of those?
Yes.
Okay. But to know whether or not these are actually caused by Engerix-B, again, you would need a properly randomized placebo-controlled study, correct?
Correct.
Okay.